Okay, factorising, this is a non-monic expression, quadratic expression. It's a quadratic because it's got an x squared with an x and then a constant term, and it's non-monic because it's got a 3 at the front here. Normally it would be a 1 or nothing if it was a monic equation. Now for us to do that, we need to make it to become a binomial. Now for it to become a binomial, when we factorise remember means put back into brackets. It's like doing the reverse of FOIL. Now in order to get that first term, the first term when we expand it should give 3x squared. Now the only way that we can get that is if we have a 3x here and we have an x at the front there. So our first term, when we do that expansion, will be 3x times by x, which will give us that 3x squared. Now the next thing that we look at is I always look at the last term. So the last two terms have to multiply. These two terms here have to multiply to give positive 10. So we need to think of all the numbers, and this is what I like to do over to the side here, all the numbers that can multiply together to give positive 10. Well, let's have a think. 10 times by positive 1, that will give 10. 2 times by 5, that will also give 10. But we also need to consider negative values. Now it's particularly important in this case that we consider negative values because we do have a negative b value here, minus 17. Now that kind of indicates to me that we are looking at two negative numbers that multiply together to give a positive. Remember that that's the case. So we also need to consider negative 1 times by negative 10 will still multiply together to give positive 10, and also negative 2 multiplied by negative 5. Now the complexity is added to this one because what we're looking at is a number of different ways this could happen. Where also negative 10 and negative 1 could work, and negative 5 and negative 2 could work. Now because it's a non-monic, that does become important in the order that these go in, because remember we've already worked out that our first is going to give us the 3x squared. When we do our last two values, if we use any combination of these, that will give us positive 10. But what we need to now work out is when we do the inner two values, these two here, and the outer two values, those two there, we're looking for the combination that when we get both of those together, it's going to give us negative 17, remembering that the outer ones will be multiplied by 3. Now you can use a little bit of trial and error here, and we can eventually work out whether we're getting close or not. Okay, we've already decided to eliminate these positive values. Get rid of the positive values because we are after a negative value here. Okay, so we might start by looking at this one here and seeing if that works. If I put negative 1 here and negative 10 here, when I expand that, am I going to get negative 17 as the middle value? Well, let's have a look. We know that we're going to get 3x squared when we do our first. Okay, that's the reason that we've chosen that. Then let's look at outer. 3x times by negative 10 would be negative 30x. Inner is negative 1 times by x, which would be negative 1x, or just negative x. And then last, obviously, negative and negative give a positive, and 1 times by 10 is 10. So we've got the last value right. But let's have a look at what happens here with this middle value. Well, we've got negative 30x minus another 1x, which is negative 31x. So I know that that combination is not right, because what I'm after is it being negative 17 when I do that. So let's get rid of that, and we can eliminate that value and say, okay, that one definitely didn't work. So let's try some different values. We know that it's going to be negatives. I'm going to leave my negatives in there. Let's try the 5 here and the 2 here. Now, I'm going to leave these values in here because I know that when I go negative 2 times by negative 5, I'm going to get positive 10 as my last value, and I know that 3x times by x is going to give us 3x squared for the first value. What I'm interested in is the outer and the inner. So for the outer value, you get 3x multiplied by negative 5, which is negative 15x. And then for inner, the inner two values, negative 2 times by x, which is negative 2x. Now when we simplify that one, we still get 3x squared here. And then for this middle value, negative 15 minus 2 is negative 17x. So we have worked out the correct answer, which is this one here. We won't bother trying these other ones because we have already got a correct answer. Okay, so the best way to check is by by expanding and then simplifying to see that you do get the same answer that you had originally.